Back again today, betting my soul that Christianity is wrong, and that's a sure bet. I'm trying to talk some sense into Christians here because sadly, and I don't say this to be insulting, but Christianity isn't just illogical, it's straight delusional. To say that a book like the Bible, which really isn't even a book, it's a collection of books, is without error and without contradiction is not just a simple mistake, it's straight delusional. You can't expect regular people with basic reading comprehension to read this book and say that there's no mistakes in here. That is insane because it is absolutely riddled with them. So when you tell somebody that this book don't have mistakes or errors and you think they're the crazy ones for saying yes it does, I'm sorry, that's called delusional. And I'm going to give you some examples. So when Christians are always like, yeah, they're scoffers. There's going to be scoffers. Like, of course there's going to be scoffers. You're telling them nonsense that anybody can clearly see is nonsense, and you're telling them it's not nonsense. And they're, or me, or whoever is sitting there looking at it with their own eyeballs, and it is clearly nonsense. And that's why I keep saying words like delusional. And I know nobody likes to hear that, but that's just how it is. Like, this is a scam, and I'm trying to show people it's a scam. So, if you've read the Old Testament, in the Old Testament, God Himself, the God of this book, the evil God of this book, tells people the whole time, tells the Israelites, their God. That's who's writing this, is Israelites. They're writing about their own problems and their own God. And He promises them over and over He's going to send a Messiah, a king, an earthly king, to rule over them on earth from an earthly empire in Jerusalem, which is a literal city on earth. And this is going to be a human from the line of David. So all the Old Testament says that. And then here comes the New Testament 500-600 years later and says, oh, by the way, our guy is this Messiah. And our guy is God Himself. So this human who came from the loins of David, which actually didn't come from the loins of David if it's Jesus, but that's a different argument, is God Himself. So Christians would not only have you believe that this God was prophesying a Messiah that was going to come and rule a worldwide empire and have worldwide peace, but they would have you believe it's their God, Jesus, who wasn't even a warrior, and who was apparently Yahweh Himself. So, where do they get this from? The Old Testament? Do they get it from Isaiah maybe? Isaiah 53? How about Isaiah 11? Isaiah 11 is an actual messianic prophecy. Y'all want to read it? Let's read the first little part here. It won't take but a second. It says in Isaiah 11, verse 1, a shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. So Christians, do you really expect people who don't already believe this and share in the delusion to think that Jesus is a human who is also God, 100% of each, 200%. He's 100% man, he's 100% God. That's 200%. Things aren't 200%. But y'all expect us to believe that God Himself, surprise, was this Messiah the whole time, according to the New Testament, even though it never says that in the Old. This is God Himself, this Messiah, right? So you would have me believe that God Himself is a human from the loins of David, who is an Israelite, and who fears the Lord. You're telling me the Lord will fear the Lord. And not only will He fear the Lord, it says His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. So you're going to tell me that the Lord delights in fearing Himself? You know that don't make no kind of sense. You know it don't. So persist there. Explain to me how that actually does make sense, please. Crap, that light turned on. Never mind. I'll turn it off in a minute. You can see my halo up here. I'm doing this right. I'm telling y'all the truth. I'm trying to help humanity here. Now, I mentioned too that God is evil. And I know God is evil because I've read this book. And by any normal and even by your own standards, this is unjust. The difference is that when your God does it, it's not evil, it's love somehow or another. And that just another persist in this delusion thing that I keep bringing up. Because let's just read it. Here's a contradiction and an error and a great example of God being the evil barbarian of a deity that he is. This is from First Chronicles. Actually, let's read 2 Samuel 24 first. And it says, again, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, go, count the people of Israel and Judah. So the king said to Joab and the commanders of the army who were with him, go through all the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba and take a census of the people, so that I may know how many there are. Pretty simple, right? It says God was angry for some reason, so he told David to take a census. So what did David do? He did what God told him. He sent his commanders to take a census, right? Okay, seems straightforward. But Joab said to the king, may the Lord your God increase the number of people 100-fold, while the eyes of the Lord the king can still see it. But why does the king want to do this? But the king's word prevailed against Joab and the commanders of the army. So Joab and the commanders of the army went out from the presence of the king to take a census of the people of Israel. They crossed the Jordan and began from Aroer and from the city that is in the middle of the valley toward Gad and on to Jazer. And they came from Dan. They went down to Sidon and came to the fortress of Tyre and all the cities of the Hivites and Canaanites. And they went out to Negab and Judah and Beersheba. So they had gone through all the land. They came back to Jerusalem. At the end of the 9 months and 20 days, Joab reported to the king the number of those had been recorded. Now, verse 10, but afterward, David was stricken to the heart because he had numbered the people. David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. But now, O Lord, I pray to you, take away the guilt of your servant, for I have done very foolishly. When David rose in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, saying, go and say to David, thus says the Lord, 3 things I offer you. He offers him 3 punishments for the crime of taking the census that God told him to take. God told David to take a census. David took it, and God got really mad that he did it. And now he's saying, now pick. I'm going to unalive a whole bunch of my followers because of what you did. David just got done saying, I have sinned. Me. Not them. So God is about to punish 70,000 Israelites for what David apparently did. And David's crime was obeying what God freaking told him to do. Again, you can't expect anybody with any sense. I don't even think you yourselves respect this in any sort of manner. But you have this delusion in your head that God is all love, and that's just how it is. So this must mean love and justice. But it's not. God unalived 70,000 of his own people. And here's the contradiction. If you read this exact same story in First Chronicles, remember what the first line of Samuel says? It says, the Lord incited David to take a census. Listen to this. This says, Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to count the people of Israel. So this author of this book says Satan incited David to take the census. Now Christians say this isn't a contradiction because God actually told Satan to do it, and Satan did it. So now what are you telling me, delusional Christians? Are you telling me that Satan just carrying out whatever order God told him to do? Does Satan obey God? Is that why Satan is Satan? Because he does what God tells him? Wow, this story is getting wrapped up in all kinds of problems, ain't it? So Christians, please, if you think you can explain this, explain this. If not, just realize that this is delusional and admit it's wrong. It is mistakes, and I don't know. You've got to change because this is ridiculous. Any normal person can read this and say this is clearly a contradiction. God's clearly doing some shady and evil shit, and Jesus is clearly not God himself because God doesn't fear God. Throw me a like and follow. I'm about to throw up some lives. Y'all come talk to me. I'm not hostile. I'm hostile to your ideal of this religion, but that's it. So please, give me a holler.